Side of this debate, the Senate Intelligence Committee leaders, Dianne Feinstein and Saxby Chambliss, they released a joint statement Tuesday condemning the MSNBC Amendment, calling the idea to defund the surveillance program, quote, unwise. Well, Senator Chambliss joins me now with the other side. Senator, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Chuck.
Well, let me ask you this. Look at our NBC Wall Street Journal poll. There is a growing public concern that the government is going to go too far. The checks and balances that are supposed to be in this program are frankly very hard for anybody to prove that they're working. So, you know, whether it's transparency in the FISA court. I understand the fight over a funding amendment, including, I think, the congressman sort of acknowledged there's not much you can do. How do you change this to restore the trust of the American people?
Well, you know, Chuck, 9/11 changed things. But what 9/11 didn't change is the Constitution. If we had had this program in effect before 9/11, there's a good chance we would have picked up on some conversations about the planning and developing of the plans for 9/11. So what we tried to make sure of in the developing of this program, as well as the oversight of this program, that number one, it is within the bounds of the Constitution, and it is. It's overseen by a federal court, just like search warrants, just like arrest warrants. And the fact of the matter is that it is not only overseen by courts, but it's overseen by the Department of Justice, by the National Security Agency, by the legislators in the House on the Intel Committee, by legislators in the Senate on the Intelligence Committee, because we understand the sensitivity of this program. But by the same token, we have not had another major domestic attack since 9/11, and there are reasons for it, and this program is one of the reasons.
Senator, with all due respect, as you know, the public's trust these days of all government officials is pretty low.
Sure.
The famous Reagan saying, trust but verify. And when it comes to this FISA court, and it doesn't appear they reject much at all, and it gives this feeling that while it is a check and balance that was put into the law, it's there in name only. How do you create some reassurance that the FISA court is seriously doing serious oversights and protecting the constitutional rights of the American public?
There are reasons why the court doesn't reject many applications. Number one, the intelligence community is very deliberate in making sure that when they go to the FISA court, they got their act together. And it is a real threat to the United States that they're presenting to the FISA court. There are not very many of these cases in the scheme of things that are presented. When they are presented, the FISA court sometimes will say, guys, hey, this is not going to work. You need to either withdraw this or you need to tweak it and come back to us. So there are reasons why the court does not reject. Some of them are rejected kind of informally. So this program is well overseen, Chuck. I can tell you that we do understand the sensitivity of the program. We know that while the Supreme Court has said that these records have no right of expectation of privacy, there is an expectation of privacy on the part of the American people, and that's why there's not been anybody who has ever had their privacy invaded with respect to the collection of this metadata. If you're talking to the right folks, you don't have anything to worry about. If you're talking to bad guys who are plotting against America, you better believe you got something to worry about.
Well, let me ask you this. What about a middle ground here? You heard the Democratic congressman, I think, talk about this idea of, okay, instead of the government collecting this data, make it so that the phone companies themselves, the communication companies, it's archaic, I think, to call them phone companies now, but these communication companies, to archive the data themselves and sort of create basically one extra level of safeguards, of privacy safeguards. Is that a workable compromise?
Well, actually, we've looked at that. We're continuing to look at that. We're also looking at the fact of getting a third party to store the data, Chuck. So when it comes to transparency, we want to make sure that we can do everything we can without disclosing sources and methods. There are some issues there. It's a very, very expensive proposition to have the companies maintain these records. And secondly, when the intelligence community and the law enforcement community needs this information, rather than going to 4, 5, or 6 or 7 locations to get the information, now they can go to one, they can get it instantaneously. And because there's so few of these cases, and because there are so few individuals, Chuck, who have access to this.
Yeah.
The number would astound your listeners out there.
Well,
even though,
that said,
Snowden,
a 29-year-old, I was just going to say, though, a 29-year-old IT guy at a contractor got this information. So,
that
you know,
is
your
a
reassurance
major
on, I was just going to, your reassurance here that so few have access, we just look at this Edward Snowden and we wonder, well, who else has access?
Yeah, that is a real problem. In fact, that's more of a problem than the underlying issue, in my opinion. We've got real checks and balances in who gets the clearance and whether those clearances ought to be maintained. That is a very, very serious issue in and of itself, Chuck.
All right. Well, Senator Saxby, Chambliss, I have to leave it there. The Senate, Ron Wyden, Mark Udall.